Alright, so as you already know, Sonic Generations is basically the Sonic 3 and Knuckles of the modern games. I know what you're thinking. Are you saying it's the pinnacle of modern Sonic? I thought your goat was Hero. No, I'm not saying it's the pinnacle of modern Sonic. There's multiple modern Sonic games. I love modern Generations. I don't even think 3 and Knuckles is the pinnacle of classic Sonic. I prefer Sonic 2. Anyway, the reason why I'm calling it the 3 and Knuckles of modern Sonic is because it's the least controversial game. It's like the game that the majority of people just enjoy, whether it's their favorite or not, they enjoy it. They don't seem to have anything horrifically bad to say about it. I mean, they got critiques just like any game, but it's easily accessible enough. And given that SEGA have been on a porting spree recently, it only makes sense that Generations should be considered in the porting run, right? They already ported Colors, and they're scared to port more risky games like Sonic Unleashed or Sonic Heroes or whatever, and I'm guessing they're saving the adventure games for the full-blown remake treatment, right? Because there's Moolah in that. So the question is, how should they tackle a Sonic Generations Ultimate? So I'm here to answer that question. But if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please make sure to subscribe. We are trying to hit 1 million subscribers before Sonic Adventure 3 gets revealed. So imagine the makers of Genshin Impact made a space fantasy RPG. Well, you don't have to imagine, because this video sponsor, Honkai Star Rail, has got you covered, man. This is a free cross-platform RPG available now on mobile and PC, and it's coming to PlayStation in Q4 2023. Your save data carries across all the different platforms, and in version 1.3, you're going to witness the epilogue of the story on the Xianzhou Luofu. You get to embark on a space adventure, explore different worlds with more than 20 playable characters, each with their own unique personality, backstory, and charm, with endless team building possibilities, with diverse enemies, environments, characters, and upgrades for a truly personalized strategy. Now, over 80 million people have already downloaded this game in less than 3 months since its launch, but it's not too late to get in. They got a new limited 5-star character called Imbibita Lune, a male character with an elegant and noble demeanor. He's mastered the ability to manipulate water and life. Although he looks like a teenager, he is very sophisticated, and his dragon bloodline has a strong influence on his appearance. He is a powerful imaginary type DPS character of the Path of Destruction. He can manipulate the flow of water to attack enemies, and his successive waves of attacks deliver hefty damage. And we can't forget about the other new character, Fu Shan, the head of the Divination Commission. She is very haughty and ambitious. She dreams of one day being promoted as the General of the Luofu. She's a quantum type character of the Path of Preservation. Her main ability is protecting her teammates in battle, and she can reduce the damage received by all teammates and take some damage for her teammates, making her an excellent damage reducing support character. Now in version 1.3, we will see the story that follows after the main Xianzhou storyline and learn more about the characters and places of the Xianzhou. Version 1.3 will also introduce a new version of the simulated universe, which is a roguelike gameplay mode, and there are free 10 warps waiting to be won. All you have to do is log in for 7 days to claim 10 Star Rail special passes for free. So make sure to download Honkai Star Rail for free using the link in the description below, and of course use the redemption code on the screen right now to redeem Stellar Jade times 50. So before I start, I just want to say this, right? SEGA are largely incompetent when it comes to porting Sonic games, so everything I'm about to say is the ideal version of Sonic Generations Ultimate. Not the realistic version that we expect from SEGA, but the version we expect if it was like Nintendo going ham for this shit, right? Like, SEGA will do the bare minimum, and it will probably look worse than the original somehow, and have some kind of lighting issue or some kind of removal of something that we liked. This is the dream version of Sonic Generations Ultimate, the exactly how I would want it to be for me to comfortably play full price and give it like a 10 out of 10. Well, I mean, it's a 10 out of 10 for its remaking abilities, not exactly 10 out of 10 because it's still Generations, and I wouldn't give that 10. That being said, I'm not going to say that they should add Adventure Sonic to all the levels, because as cool as that sounds, I mean, it's a whole different game at that point. You'd have to rework like everything. So we're going to start with the simple shit and then we'll get more in depth. I mean, it's not too much to say, but the obvious shit, obviously it's going to run at 4K. Ideally for the latest consoles like PS5 and Series X, but aiming for 120 frames per second. I mean, those consoles can do that. If they can't do that, then we'll have to settle for 60. And Switch, I mean, let's just say Switch 2, it could do 60, right? Obviously PC, the frame rate will be unlocked, so if you got 144 Hz or even higher, you can run it super smooth. There is a hack right now that can run Generations at 144 Hz, but it locks your analog stick, so if you're playing a boost level, you can use the boost button to like finesse your way through like modern Green Hill, but it's not really practical right now. The point is that seeing at 144 Hz shows how good the boost formula of Sonic works at higher refresh rates, and it'll be a crime to have another Sonic game locked at 60 frames per second basically. Back on the topic of 4K, obviously the HUD elements will be updated to be 4K. We could even use higher res textures, potentially ray tracing, you know, just basically do the most that they can do outside of actually fully remaking the game. Just like touching up everything to the best of their ability within the engine. Of course, for the PC version, no separate configuration tool. Leave that shit in the 2010s. PC games have largely moved away from that and put the settings in the game. Obviously, better controller support, like just a better PC port in general. As a PlayStation controller user as well, PlayStation controls on PC version will be great. This is like more of a bonus thing, but you could bundle in Generations 3DS as like a bonus game, like how you got like emulated games in Sonic Adventure DX. It was a nice little bonus. But anyway, time for the more major points, okay? Fix the ranking system. Everyone knows the ranking system in Generations is shit. Piss easy. Toughen that shit up so S ranks actually require effort. There is one thing that Generations ranking system did right though that people don't usually mention, but it's the fact that you get one extra rank grade for not dying, right? So you could never get an S rank if you die. Previous Sonic games, you could still technically get the highest rank while dying, especially if you died before like the second checkpoint, or I guess also before the first checkpoint, but that's kind of redundant. Although that actually brings light to a separate issue in Generations. If you die in Generations before the first checkpoint and then you restart the level without actually hitting the retry button, you cannot get an S rank. It will say that you died, so you can't get an S rank, even though you died before the first checkpoint and started from the beginning of the level. So you have to manually start over, which costs you an additional life to make sure that you still get your S rank. It's a very silly thing that should be fixed. Now on the topic of lives are pretty much pointless in Generations because the game is so piss easy. I mean, even if we improve the ranking system, the lives are still going to be kind of just there. You could just remove them and just use the rings as currency to buy shit. I propose adding skins like in Crash Bandicoot 4, maybe different models of Sonic from his history, like if you want to use Adventure Sonic, SA1, SA2, Heroes models or whatever like that, and you could unlock them by just getting a certain amount of rings in the game. I think that would be pretty cool. Now on the topic of difficulty, I'm sure if you play Generations, you've seen that there's a hard mode available for the bosses and the rival battles, right? Bring that shit to the main levels too. 06 had something like this, right? You had like the hard version of levels and even the very hard version of levels as DLC. So harder versions of all the modern classic Sonic main levels that just have like more hazards or even more pits, tougher rankings, maybe even a longer level for these levels. That would be a great addition to the game that would add some amazing level of replayability to the product, especially once you've gotten really good at the simpler versions of the levels. Having those harder versions there is just a great addition. And speaking of things that add replayability, online battle mode. You could do something very simple, something basic like what Super Mario Wonder is doing with the ghost racing. These things are already built into Sonic Generations, like with the doppelganger races, you're just racing a ghost. In this event, you're effectively racing ghosts, but it's live ghosts, right? So you're playing people online, but you can't interact with each other in terms of touching each other, but you are racing each other live, effectively. And even the ability to race pre-recorded ghosts as well will be fun too. Like if you're trying to beat someone's time, you could go back and forth with your friends. Something simple like that. They don't have to go too crazy with the online, but some form of online battle functionality would be appreciated, right? Another point, obviously we live in a post-Mania world now, so give classic Sonic the drop dash. Although his spin dash in Generations was so OP that I don't even know if the drop dash would help that much, but I wouldn't want to completely just classify his physics here because the OP spin dash kind of worked at these levels, but yeah, add the drop dash in some way, shape or form. Now here's another point I want to mention, and this one is a bit, I don't want to say controversial, but I guess it depends on if they plan on actually remastering Unleashed at some point, but they could bundle in the Unleashed daytime levels as DLC, like on some Unleashed project type shit, but instead of it being a mod, it's just like a menu in the game where you could just go to the Unleashed project section and just play those levels, maybe even add back the QTEs that are missing from the real Unleashed project mod. But again, if they do plan on re-releasing Unleashed, it's kind of cutting into that. But if you wanted to make the ultimate bundle, I mean, it's just more boost levels, right? It would fit in a Generations package. And personally speaking, I'll still buy an Unleashed Ultimate even if they put the Unleashed day levels in Generations. Like Unleashed as a whole package is an amazing experience, one that I like more than Generations. But on the topic of the main game, there's going to be a little bit of restructuring. Nothing crazy, but since this game is Generations, you want it to reflect the fact that things have happened since Generations, right? So right now in regular Generations, after you finish Modern Planet Wisp, you go to Egg Dragoon, right? And then after that, you'd go to the Supersonic ending with Modern and Classic Supersonic, of course. But in this instance, after you do Egg Dragoon, there will be a final era, a fourth era, that would represent the games that came out after Sonic Generations. I don't even know what you'd call this. Like, you can't really call it the meta era because Colors is in the previous era. I guess you could call it the mid era. I'm joking. I don't know. Come up with something. So in this era, you'd have Sonic Lost World, Sonic Mania, and of course Sonic Forces. Now, before you go, well, where's Sonic Frontiers? Firstly, the eras are 3 per era, right? So there's not really room for Frontiers. Secondly, there's no new levels in Frontiers. Like if we're talking cyberspace, which would be like the basis for this, there's nothing new. You could use from the islands, I guess you could make a Kronos level or an Ares level or a Chaos Island level, which Chaos Island is actually very beautiful aesthetically. I would love to see that, but just for the purpose of the fitting in of eras, I just don't think it would fit here, especially since Frontiers is still kind of its own thing, even though it's still a boost game. But we will use Frontiers in some way. But before I talk about that, I want to talk about the levels that I want to pick for this 4th era. So I want to pick the levels that stand out the most in those games, like usually visually or level design wise. So my picks would be for Sonic Lost World, basically the sea bottom segway levels. If you don't know what levels those are, it's basically the 2 rail levels in the underwater environment. I think that was just the coolest thing ever, and I think it's the most unique thing about Sonic Lost World, aside from I guess the parkour. It's just an environment that you would never forget, because Lost World's got a lot of generic environments, but that one always stands out, and the music was amazing. So seeing that come back, especially seeing how you do it with classic Sonic, I think that'll be interesting to see as well. For Sonic Mania, it's a pretty obvious one. It's obviously going to be Studiopolis Zone. Like there's no real debate there. There's 4 new zones in Sonic Mania. The Studiopolis was the best one, okay? Although I would argue Titanic 1 or Act 1 was fire too, but just visually speaking, Studiopolis just stands out. They used it to sell the game effectively. The music, everything. Modern Studiopolis Zone would go super ham. Again, this is a Dream remaster, right? So we're assuming that the people designing these levels in Generations Ultimate were the same people or people with similar levels of talent to the people that did the level design for the base generations, right? Again, real Sega wouldn't be able to pull this off. And for Forces, my pick is Metropolitan Highway. I believe that for modern Sonic, that was pretty much the best level in Forces. Although I'll be fine with an improved version of Eggate, because I did enjoy Eggate in Sonic Forces as well. Environment wise, it's really between Eggate and Metropolitan Highway. Metropolitan Highway is a very beautiful level. It reminds you of like Grand Metropolis, but just covered in white basically. And I feel like that fits the aesthetic of Generations because of the whole white world situation. So to have Sea Bottom Segway, Studiopolis Zone, and Metropolitan Highway rework the Generation style level design, I think would be pretty crazy. Which brings us back to Frontiers. So as you know, there's always a boss at the end of each era of Generations. So the boss I propose would be one of the Titans from Sonic Frontiers, right? This is before the Supersonic ending, of course. So this would be taking a Titan and reworking it to work without Supersonic. So I could go with like Giganto or Giganto. How do you pronounce? I don't know. But that was my favorite one, mostly because Undefeatable just carries it. But I did a poll on my YouTube channel and people said that their favorite Titan was Knight. So I guess we could pick that. But it would be very interesting to see how they would rework the boss to work without Supersonic, because you'd be using regular Sonic with his boost to try and beat the Titan. But that's kind of what would make it interesting and not a copy paste of the one in Frontiers, right? Now, of course, with Sonic Frontiers Update 3 coming, it's probably going to change the bosses significantly, especially the end bosses. So if you're watching this video after that, maybe there's some newer or better boss that we could have used instead. But at the point of me recording, I guess take Knight or Giganto or something like that and rework it to not be Supersonic. Now, there's another boss that we also have to consider, right? Because every era has the rival battle, right? And this is what I propose. Tails. I know, right? Really, the bitch boy? Yes. Remember that cutscene in Sonic Colors where Eggman like had the, I've forgotten what they call the shit, the mind control shit, where they gave it to Tails and Tails was like blocking Sonic's path, and it was looking like Sonic was gonna fight Tails, right? And then because they didn't want to make us watch Sonic beat the shit out of Tails, you know, he regained his consciousness and Sonic didn't have to fuck up Tails, right? But it looked like it was leading up to a boss scene. That would be an epic boss to add to this era as a rival battle, right? Technically it's part of the previous era, right? But we're adding it to this era because, well, we need something for this era. And let's be real, Sonic hasn't had like a definitive rival since the post 2000s era. Like the whole meta era hasn't had one definitive rival. Like if we look at the history of Sonic, his first rival was like Metal Sonic and CD. Then it was like Knuckles and Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And then it became like Shadow in the Adventure era, right? And then it became Silver in like the Dark Ages or whatever. Like he's always had like a major rival. And since then, it's kind of like, because they haven't been adding new rivals, it's kind of like a mix of rehashing the old rivals. Like they bring back Shadow to like harken back to that SA2 like rivalry hype, but it's never as good. And obviously Metal Sonic will always be a rival because he's an Eggman robot, so like he's Eggman's best robot, makes sense. But it's never gonna be like it was in Heroes, and the rivalry of Knuckles is never gonna be like it was in Sonic 3 and Knuckles or even SA1. Of course the movie did the rivalry justice, but the movie is based off again Sonic 3 and Knuckles and SA1. And Silver, I don't think Silver's even a rival anymore. Like Silver and Sonic are just cool now. So finally getting that Tails rival battle would be really cool, because I don't think we've ever seen that Sonic versus Tails on like a serious level, unless you count racing against Tails and like Sonic All-Stars Racing or some shit. I don't know. Just like the way Modern Planet Wisp and Generations redeemed Colors by being better than every level in colors, I mean, this boss battle could effectively redeem colors too, redeeming what could have been a cold boss fight that was relegated to a cutscene. Of course, in this 4th era, you'd still have the missions as well, so you'd have a bunch of missions and things to do in there. I'm not going to go into full details of what every mission should be, but just interesting things similar to what were in the previous eras of missions, basically. And of course, those tougher rankings I was talking about. And after you finish the 4th era and you finish the Tails rival battle and then you finish the Frontiers Titan boss, then you'll go to Time Meter just like the regular generations. Only this time Meter copies the 3DS version of the game, simply because it's the better version. Now, don't get your pants in this way. I'm not saying that Generations 3DS is better than the main version of Gens. That's just ludicrous, right? That game is overall mid. But the final boss in Generations 3DS is way better, way more enjoyable, way more challenging than the regular Time Meter in the main generations. So just copy that version and make it HD effectively, and you've got a winner. And I think that's pretty much it. I think I've touched on all the points I think are important to me when it comes to Generations Ultimate. I'd have no problem paying full price if they did all of this shit, although I'm a fucking sucker Sonic fan, so I'll probably still pay full price for the bare minimum anyway, but you know, I'm still gonna have my wish list, right? Let me know what you guys think about my list. What would you add? What would you remove? What would you change in general? Do you even want to see a Generations Ultimate? Do you think the name Ultimate has been so tainted by Colors Ultimate that they should never use that word again? Call it Sonic Generations Regenerated on some mid-journey shit? And of course, a big shout out to all my channel members. If you want to become a channel member, you can click the join button next to the subscribe button. But yeah, thanks you guys for watching. It's been real. The Remy, yeah.